Good evening, everyone. Welcome. My name is Dawn McMaster, and I'm the Director of Audience Engagement for the NLC. And I have a question. There are some new faces out here, and I'm just wondering how many of you are new to attending events with the NLC? I see one. Yep, two. Right, wonderful. Welcome, and I hope you enjoy tonight's event. In the fall of 2024, we launched the Connector campaign, and in that first year, about 125 people signed up. Last year, we expanded that base to 150, and we are very grateful. We need connectors and donors because the hardworking program committee plans each series about 6 months in advance, and that requires predictable funding in place in order to lock in speakers. For $90 per household or $50 as an individual, your Connector contribution to the 2026 campaign will help the NLC continue its great work next year. There is no swag or waste with your Connector contribution, but there is a perk. Connectors are invited to an annual NLC garden party, a highly coveted invitation in the local social calendar. And this year, it will be held in a location with an epic view. If you haven't connected yet, when you get home, please visit the NLC website to contribute as a connector or to give a further supporting donation. Alternatively, visit Wayne and Joanne over at the connector table on your way out. Now, with no further ado, let's get started with tonight's programming. Whoops. I need a piece of paper. We respectfully acknowledge that we are located in the traditional and territory treaty of the Mississauga and Chippewa Nations, collectively known as the William Treaties First Nations. This includes Curve Lake, Hiawatha, Alderville, Scugog Island, Rama, Beausoleil, and Georgina Island First Nations. We respectfully acknowledge that the William Treaties First Nations have been stewards and caretakers of these lands and waters, and today remain vigilant over their health and integrity for generations to come. We are all treaty people. This evening, it's my distinct pleasure to introduce you to this evening's speaker, Dr. Sadaf Mollaei. Sadaf is the Arrell Chair in the Business of Food and an assistant professor in the School of Hospitality, Food, and Tourism Management at the Gordon S. Lang School of Business and Economics at the University of Guelph. Dr. Mollaei also holds an adjunct assistant professor position in the School of Environment, Enterprise, and Development at the University of Waterloo. Sadaf has a unique background with a PhD in Sustainability Management, an MBA in Marketing, and an undergraduate degree in Civil Engineering. Remarkable. This broad base allows for an interdisciplinary approach to research that is designed to generate and interpret qualitative and quantitative data at the intersection of sustainability, marketing, and public health. She's particularly interested in studying the promotion of sustainability through interventions and marketing, especially to young adults and children who will be the consumers of the future. Her insights this evening will be invaluable as we continue our investigation into food, feeding a changing world. Sadaf.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you, Dawn. Thank you for having me. And thanks, everyone who is here tonight. My name is Sadaf Mollaei, and today I'm going to be talking about the marketing of food. So, who here has had baby carrots? Almost everyone. Who here knows where baby carrots come from? From? From the mother carrots. So does anybody know the story behind the creation of baby carrots? So in around 1986, there was a farmer in California and he loved growing carrots. But he also had to throw almost half of his crop out because of some cosmetic situations. They were bent or they were broken, so he couldn't really sell them. And he really didn't like that. And then he had a wife, and sometimes the wife would complain that when I'm trying to cook with carrots, I need to cut them, I need to wash them, I need to peel them, and that's so much trouble. So the farmer came up with this idea that maybe he could use those carrots that he couldn't sell, peel them, cut them into smaller pieces, wash them, and then people could easily use them for cooking. And he did just that. Did all of that, put them in a package, called them baby carrots, and then sent them off to market. The baby carrots did pretty well in the market, but they weren't being used for cooking. A lot of people liked snacking on them. And so they realized that, okay, if people like to snack on them, maybe we need to change the packaging. So they started to put these baby carrots into smaller packages, similar to what you would have in a snack, try to distribute them to schools, to vending machines, and then try to have some advertisement that would really resonate with the younger consumers. And then that became one of the very known success stories in food marketing. And this is what we're going to be talking about today. I know that for those of you who've been coming to the sessions for these series, you've heard about the food system from a global point of view. You've heard about some disruptions in the supply chain, climate change, food insecurity. And today we want to talk about more of the end user of the supply chain, who are the consumers. So the title of this talk is The Marketing of Food. And we all know what food is. So I just wanted to spend a little bit of time on the marketing part of it. And for some of you, this might be more of a repetitive information, but just go with it. So for a lot of people, marketing and advertising are the same thing. They have the same meaning, which is not entirely true. So in Marketing 101, we say there are 4 elements to marketing, or 4 Ps: product, price, place, and promotion. And how these 4 Ps work together, and how we can use different strategies to align elements of these 4 Ps in a way that consumers would choose our product and ultimately purchase our product, that is marketing. So advertising, which lies under promotion, is a part of marketing, but it's not just advertising. So if you want to look at an example, think about a plant-based ice cream, an oat milk ice cream. So that's the product. Some characteristics would be the design of the product, the taste, the flavor, the texture. Then we have the pricing of the product. How much does it cost? Cost translates to or communicates value. It communicates quality. It really communicates who this specific product is for. So there is a price point for it, and then there's also a price compared to other ice creams. It could be just your regular dairy ice cream or other plant-based ice creams. Then we have the place. Where can you find this ice cream? Is it only in specialty stores, or is it in your mainstream regular grocery stores? In the store, is it located, is it placed in the shelves in the plant-based, vegan, vegetarian zone, or is it next to all the other ice creams? And then the promotion part. How is the product communicated? The signage, the messaging. How do they talk about this product? In which platform do they talk about the product? Because all of that matters. All of that impacts your choice. If you go into a store, you want to buy an ice cream, and you're looking for a salted caramel ice cream. If the oat milk ice cream doesn't have a salted caramel flavor, then it's out of the mix. You're not gonna buy that. If the price is much higher than your regular ice cream, again, it's out. For many people, you won't be paying more just for an ice cream that you don't even know what it tastes. So if there is a salted caramel flavor, if the price is comparable to a familiar brand that you know, if it is located next to the other ice creams, and then there is a big sign saying it's ultra creamy oat milk ice cream, it increases the chances of you choosing this ice cream. Whereas if it was tucked in the back in the vegan zone, you would never see it, you would never buy it. So the question is, why do we buy what we buy? How do we make these decisions? Humans have two systems of making decisions. We've got system number one, which is fast decision making. It's your everyday decision making. It happens automatically. 2 + 2, 4. You see red light, you stop. You see the blue label, it's Pepsi. You see the red label, it's Coca-Cola. Depending on if you're a Pepsi person or you're a Coke person, you immediately choose one. You don't make that decision every time. I'm a Coke Zero person. Whenever there are carbonated drinks, I always go for the Coke Zero. I don't make that decision every time. But then there are decisions that you make with your system too. Decisions that are slow. They take time. You need to analyze things. You need to have certain criteria. You need to really think about it. For example, if you want to buy a house, it's not an everyday decision. You really need to spend time to decide if you want to buy a house or if you want to buy a specific house. And it doesn't have to be for your big decisions. It could be small, it could be about food. I've been recently getting into drinking some plant-based milk, but I still don't know which one I like. So every time I go to the store, I have to spend time in front of the shelves deciding, do I want oat? Do I want almond? Do I want soy? I have to read the labels. How much calorie does it have? How much protein does it have? I still have to use my system too to decide what I want to eat. And there might be people who've been drinking plant-based milk for a long time, and it's a system one decision for them. They know, I like almond milk, non-sweetened, that's what I go for. So there are the decision, it doesn't matter what you're deciding on, it really matters who is making that decision. And surprisingly, 90% of our food decisions are done automatically. They're done on autopilot. My husband was telling me yesterday that every time you go to Costco, your bill is the same number because I buy the same things. Every 3 weeks I go to Costco, I buy the same things. That's why the bill is around the same number. And that's how you make those food choices. It is done on autopilot, but there are factors influencing your choices. And based on studies that are out there, based on research that's out there, literature that's out there, price, taste, and familiarity are the top 3 reasons people make food choices. These are the 3 things that people mostly consider when making food choices. We actually recently wrapped up a study looking into Canadian consumers specifically to understand what do Canadian consumers think about when they're making their food choices. And it was very consistent with the global population. They care about, we actually looked into specifically young adults, 18 to 24, and then we also looked into adults overall, 3,000 Canadian adults over 18. And there are some differences between the 2 categories, but the commonalities is that they care about convenience. You want a food that you can prepare fast. People want food that is a good value for their money. They care about familiarity. You usually choose brands that you know. You are more likely to go for the tastes that you already know. There are some people that care about health and sustainability. There's also that aspect of joy and pleasure, the social aspect of food, bringing people together, maybe cooking something with your kids, something that creates that sense of pleasure and social aspect of it. And then there's also the influence of culture and personal beliefs and environmental beliefs and all of that. What does it mean is that consumers are impacted by these factors when they're making food choices. Businesses, they strategize in a way that they could leverage these factors and help and not help, but shape food decisions. So, for example, they can do that in different ways. The first point of contact you have is the product itself. And most of the times, the first thing that you notice from a product, it's the packaging. Colorful packaging, a lot of red, a lot of yellow, it's perceived as tasty. It's perceived as indulgent, and it's also sometimes perceived as not healthy. So when a company has a product, has a cereal that they want you to know or think it's healthy, they're going to be using a more neutral color palette. More white, more green, a clean color palette. You look at it, you would think, well, this one's much healthier than the other one. I mean, the logo is green, so it should be healthy. But we also said that consumers care about familiarity. Maybe you want that feeling of looking into your bowl and seeing that colors and the Lucky Charms and everything. How do they respond to that? They add color to the packaging. There is a mild yellow, mild pink now added to the packaging and to the product itself. So now you see it, well, it's still clean, but it's probably going to taste much better because it has color. And it's also 25% more food because people care about price. People also care about joy. What do? They add a bunch of flavors. And then they also provide you with some information. If you want healthy cereal, you're looking for protein, you're looking for fiber, we've got it. It's on the package. You can see it, you can read it. It's non-GMO. Also, we're gonna tell you how much calorie it's in how other nutritional factors. So it gives you all that information that you wanna look at. So that would increase the chances of you choosing this specific product over the Lucky Charms. So that was the product. But then you also make your decisions in a physical environment. And the two most common ones are the retail stores, grocery stores, and also the restaurants. And this is a collaboration between myself and ChatGPT. We made these images together. It took us a long time. So how do they do that? Because you walk into the store and you have this idea of what you want to buy. In a retail store, there are around 30,000 products. But it doesn't mean that they all have the same chances of being chosen. When there are that many choices, people go for the familiar option, for the simpler option. If something is on sale, something that they know. But sometimes businesses, they want you to choose something else. So there are certain measures that they can use to influence choice. And I want to say, it's not always manipulation. It's not always because of a financial gain or because they want to trick you into choosing something. These are some of the measures that are actually used to help people make healthier choices, help people make more sustainable choices. And they fall into two main categories. Some of them are more restrictive measures. For example, policy or regulation. There is a tax on sugar-sweetened beverages. That means it's going to be more expensive. So a lot of people are not going to have that drink because it's more expensive, which is actually a good thing. You don't want people to drink sugar-sweetened beverages. So by putting an extra tax on it, making it more expensive, they're not going to buy it. There is also choice restriction, eliminating the choice. if certain items, certain junk food is not sold at school, the students, they're not going to buy it. So they're going to buy whatever is offered to them. Probably if it's a healthier option, they're going to get that. Or if your grocery store doesn't offer a certain brand or doesn't offer anything from a local farmer, that means it's not available to you. They're removing that choice, so then you're not going to be able to buy it. So there is two sides to this coin. It could be for the good, or it could be more of a business decision. And there are certain measures that are non-restrictive. And we call them choice architecture or nudges, which is one of my personal favorite topics to ever look at. And choice architecture is basically those strategies that are used to alter behavior in a predictable way without limiting your options, without forbidding anything, and without putting any significant financial incentive. And it could be done through different means or strategies, and I've listed 3 of them here. The first one is through social norm. People like to belong. People tend to follow the social rules around them because they don't want to stand out. They want to be with the community. And we could, marketers use that to their advantage. So for example, if you go into a cafe and you want to order a drink and there's an image of a drink with a sign above it saying our most popular item, you're probably going to choose that because everybody chooses that. I want to be like everybody else. I want to choose that. It's popular. It's probably good. They use that social norm for you to order that. Sometimes they say it's fan favorite, backward popular demand, something that tells you that this is something that everybody likes. So you should like it too. Or maybe there's something wrong with you and you don't want that, so you will choose that. And they do it in different ways. Again, it's not always a form of manipulation. It's just that sometimes they will do that for maybe a healthy smoothie or something like that. So people would choose that instead of having a milkshake. Or it's something that they're not selling as much. They bring it out, put the sign, and now everybody's buying it. Then we've got using self-identity. If I'm an athlete and I want to buy a protein bar, there are so many options there. One says athlete's choice. Well, I'm an athlete. It resonates with me, so I will choose the one that says athlete's choice. And the beauty of choice architecture is they're not removing any of those other protein bars. They're not eliminating your choice. They're not making this one less expensive, the other one's more expensive. It's just a label. They're playing with your mind. It's self-identity. They're tapping into that, and it resonates with you, then you're going to be choosing it. But they also use this a lot for promoting sustainable food. And for example, they would put a sign on a product that is produced by a local farmer saying that by purchasing this, you will be supporting this farmer. Now you want to support the farmer. It resonates with you, and now you're going to choose it. At the Five Guys locations, they actually say where the potato came from. It says potatoes from PI this farm. It creates that connection. It creates that sense of community for people. So now you are going to be ordering the fries because you feel like, okay, I'm helping a local farmer, which is basically true. So again, it's not black and white. Sometimes it's for good reasons, sometimes not so good reasons. And then we also have the physical environment. Going back to our ice cream example, if the ice cream is hidden in the back or in a completely different location than all the other ice creams, You're not going to see it. You're not going to buy it. If it's located next to everything else, it cues you, it nudges you to choose that option. So we do see that in retail food environments, in grocery store, they could play with the supermarket design, having different zones. If you walk into a supermarket, almost 90% of the time, the first category of products you see are fresh fruits and vegetables, produce. And that is intentional. In an attempt to nudge people to make more healthy choices, to consume more fruits and vegetables, they brought that to the front. So that's the first thing that you will see. It's a reminder that, oh, I need to buy fruits and vegetables. And that increased the consumption of fruits and vegetables. And they stayed with that layout. It's also about shelving. So in the supermarkets, most of the times, the shelves that are eye level, those are your common brands, the typical ones, the ones that people are very familiar with and mostly buy. The higher ones are the more cleaner, more expensive brands. And then there are ones halfway in the bottom that are at children's eyesight. And those are what they want to market to children. Colorful, maybe artificial color, all of that. Anything that they want the children to notice and then ask their parents to purchase for them, it would be at their eye level. And that means if that was placed someplace like at a higher shelf level, the children wouldn't see it, they wouldn't buy it. But they move it around to make sure that they're influencing that choice. And there's also price manipulation. So pricing it maybe a bit higher, lower, coupons, some other price incentives, bundling. We talked about social norm. Sometimes they put a group of products in a separate shelf with a big sign saying that this is curated for Christmas. These are all the things you need for Thanksgiving. So people would buy those things, and then also providing information. The example that we have with the ice cream, it says indulgent, creamy ice cream. Or what we've been seeing recently, you see those maple leaves on the shelves. People are concerned about purchasing Canadian products, and now retailers are putting that sign close to the products that are made in Canada, produced in Canada, packaged in Canada. They have something along their supply chain done in Canada, so then you would be choosing them. It's a similar scenario for restaurants. The more visibility you have, the more demand you have. So if they want to sell a specific product, they're going to be putting an image on the menu, on the table, on their website, outside their restaurant, all over the place. It's about the language and the framing that they use. Research shows that there are a lot of people that they don't like the framing of vegan, vegetarian, things like that. So restaurants are trying to avoid using that language and using more descriptive, indulgent language to discuss what is inside that specific food. They're also using a way to do that is try to use the employees and the staff to give recommendations, to say, have you tried this? Everybody loves this item when they try it, so then they're going to be upselling the product. It's also, again, providing information. You have calorie information on the menus. Sometimes you have labels saying that it's gluten-free, it's not free, it has or it doesn't have certain allergens. And the two of my favorite things is first using salience. So for example, they would put a sign next to a food item on the menu saying it's dish of the day or chef's choice. So it becomes more salient and people's attention goes to that. This has actually been trialed for promoting plant-based option, and it has been successful. So for example, for the main course, there's an eggplant lasagna, there is a burger, and then there's also a curry. And then they circle around the eggplant lasagna and say this is dish of the day, this actually increased the number of people who ordered that. So it has an impact. And then also defaults and branding and bundling. When you order a burger and you want to make it a meal, it comes with a drink and a fries. That's the typical bundle if you want to make a meal. In some places in Europe, when you make it a bundle, it will be the burger, the fries, and a sugar-free version of a drink. If you want, you can actually go in and change it to a regular drink. But you have to take that extra step, and many people don't do that. They'll just go with the sugar-free drink, which means generally the population are going to consume less sugar, which is good from a public health point of view. Or for example, when you are bundling kids' food, instead of fries and a drink, the burger will come with a chocolate milk, and apple slices. Oftentimes people just forget that it should come with fries as well. They'll just go with the apples. It's healthier, it's much better, and it's not removing the fries. It's just adding that extra step to change it, and people don't do that. So then they'll have the apple, which is good. So we had the product, we had the physical environment, and now there is an added layer of the digital platforms that you're using. A lot of people use their phone to or digital platforms to order food or groceries. That means you are giving information and data to that platform and enabling it to give you personalized marketing advice. It's going to be able to predict your cravings. It's going to be able to predict your shopping list. You have been ordering pizza 2 Fridays in a row. It's Friday. You open your app and says, do you want to order pizza? And you probably will. They have loyalty programs. You can collect points. If you spend this much, you're going to get 10% discount. So you will go in and buy more or buy the things that it has identified for you. Again, we have to know that the intention is not always bad. If I go into the app and it says you've ordered this before, you've ordered this brand of yogurt before, I don't want to scroll through all the different yogurts. I want to choose the one that I always do. If it says you've ordered this before, it's very convenient for me. I'm going to click on that, add it to my cart, and it saves me a lot of time. So it is actually helpful in some cases. Or for example, if it knows that I've been ordering the same things every 2 weeks and it curates a shopping list for me, it's not a bad thing. But then it also sometimes takes away from your agency because you don't go in to look at all the other options. If I always go for a specific yogurt, maybe there is one from a small producer that has higher quality or tastes better or tastes different, but I don't put in the effort to go in and scroll through all those options, so I never get to see it, and that producer doesn't have a fair chance of competing with these products because it's not being promoted on the platform, it's not being offered in my retail store. So we have to think about it like that. And then there's always one topic that is very confusing for consumers, and those are labels. Even looking at this slide is overwhelming. And that's the feeling that you get when you stand in front of an aisle full of products, so many labels, or even if you look at a package of something, so much information out there. You've got organic, you've got ocean-wise if it's seafood, you've got fair trade, you've got your LEAF certification for restaurants. Then most recently, you've got made in Canada labels on the product itself, on the shelves. And then starting January 1st, there is going to be a mandatory front of package labeling where foods, if they pass the threshold of having fat, sugar, or sodium for a certain threshold, they need to put that on their front of package labeling. And all of that, it is going to change the landscape of retail and consumers' choices. The other day, I was buying bread, the one that I usually buy, and I looked at it and it had one of those black signs on it saying high in sodium. And I started thinking, am I eating too much sodium? Should I go buy another bread? Should I make my own bread? What should I do? I mean, I still bought the bread, but that wasn't one thing that I ever considered, that there's too much sodium in my bread. And if this sign is on so many things, then people are going to change their eating patterns. They're going to change their choices. And the intention behind this is to give people information so they will know, and also to start moving towards more healthier choices. But that's going to impact the producer of these products if people are not going to buy that. But then there is a positive or an optimistic view on this. And this actually has been tested in some other countries where there was signage around like, this food is not good for you. The producers, they came up with some innovative ways to reduce, for example, if there's so much sodium in it, to reduce the amount of sodium, which is so, and then people would still buy their products. So it's basically helping from a public health point of view, and it's also really fostering innovation. But when it comes to labels, from a consumer point of view, it's always a matter of trust. Should I trust the information that is provided on this package, on this label, or not? Who is authorizing this label? Sometimes it's a health organization. Sometimes it's the government. For example, these black signs, Health Canada came up with these. So there's more trust in it compared to a label that a third-party organization came up with. From the producer side, they have to think about, okay, how much do we have to spend to get this certification? Because sometimes it's actually a lot of money and time and effort for them to get that certification. Again, for example, if there is the sign organic on a product, a lot of consumers associate that with higher prices. So then the producer thinks, is it worth it to get that organic label? Are people still going to buy? Because we are organic. We want to communicate the fact that we're organic. But if people look at the organic from far away and say, well, this is more expensive, I'm not going to even touch that, then do we want to do that or do we not? And labels have shown to be a successful tool in general to give people information. It's a great tool to communicate certain aspects or certain characteristics of the product very fast. And the intention behind some of it is to make it more convenient for the consumer to make decision. Instead of you doing all the work, doing all the research of how many calories is in this. Does it have a lot of fat? How was it produced? How is my salmon produced? Where was it produced? If you see Ocean-wise certification, then you know it was produced sustainably, so then you don't have to do a research project before buying a salmon. They've done the work for you. So again, there are some positives, there are some negatives to it. And then the question is, how are we supposed to navigate our choices with all this noise? How are we supposed to navigate our choices and make smarter, more sustainable food decisions? So there are certain things that we as consumers need to be aware of. First one is the concept of greenwashing and more recently, maple washing. So some of you might be familiar with greenwashing. It's when a organization, a company makes claims that their product is environmentally friendly, for example, net zero, low carbon footprint, without it being necessarily true. And they communicate that in different ways. Sometimes they put a label saying that it's low carbon footprint or eco-friendly. You do see a lot of that, especially on detergents and things like that. Or they sometimes just simply change the color of their logo for it to be green. And then people would assume that it's probably better for the environment. And there is, with the new greenwashing bill that's coming, they need to back up these claims that they make. So that's like a step forward for the consumers to be able to trust some of these claims that are being made. And similar to that, maple washing. The definition of Canadian product, it's very vague. What percentage or what activities in the whole supply chain are producing that product happen in Canada, it's not clear what would be that limit to be classified as product of Canada. And then there's also no regulation around who gets the red maple leaf. So because of that, maybe something has just been packaged in Canada. It was produced someplace else, just put into a box in Canada. They might be able to put that maple leaf next to it and then say, well, it was made in Canada. It's a Canadian product. So we need to be mindful of that. That means a lot of the responsibility falls on the consumer, which is not what we want. But as consumers, if we want to make sure that we are making a choice that is better for ourselves and better for the environment and for the community, we sometimes have to take that responsibility. There's also the concept of halo effect, and that is it's more of like a psychological shortcut. When there is an attribute of a product that is positive, for example, there's a label that says low fat, it creates that illusion that the product is generally good. The product is generally healthy, where in fact that might not be true. And marketers, they use that to their advantage. They try to bold out one single positive attribute of the product, which might be true, and really say, well, this defines the whole product. The product is really good, where in fact that is not true. And then we also have some ethical questions. For example, marketing junk food to children. You don't want that. And a couple of years ago, it was actually banned to market junk food to children in Canada. Or for example, a lot of people tend to make impulsive buying decisions when you're at the checkout. If everything around you is chocolate and candy, then is it ethical? Is it not? If the local producer's product is not available in your local market, they're not getting a chance. And as a consumer, you don't have the agency to choose that from all those products. Is that an ethical approach? So we always have to think about these questions as well. And then also we need to know that knowledge doesn't necessarily translate to action. And you might know a lot about a certain thing, about benefits, about the advantages, disadvantages, but price, taste, familiarity, these are usually the factors that come first. If you know this product is good for you, but it's outside your budget, you're not going to be able to afford it, no matter how much you know about it. So that means that some of these problems or some of these scenarios that we're seeing, it doesn't have to do necessarily anything with the food itself, but it's more from a systems lens, from everything else that's happening around you. If housing is not affordable, if you have to allocate most of your money to your rent, then you're not going to have money for your food. So then maybe you're not going to make food choices that are the most healthy, the most nutritious food options. It's not about the food. It's about so many other things that are happening around you. And we have to remember that. It's just going back to our carrots. Now we can see why this was an example of a very successful story, because they realized the value that they were generating for the customer was not cooking with clean, cut, peeled carrots. it was a snack. So they started mimicking junk food tactics. They started redesigning the package. They had targeted distribution for people that were snacking. And they started to really make it convenient for people to find this option. They have a consistent branding, and many, many years after it was produced, people are still snacking on carrots, on the baby carrots. And then I also wanted to finish off by some practical takeaways that you might be able to use in your future food decision making is when you see labels, try to read the labels beyond the buzzwords. So if it's carbon free, what does that mean? Sometimes it doesn't mean anything. Or if it says organic, what does it mean? How is it going to impact you? We also need to care about supporting transparency. Where the product was produced, where does it come from, where was it packaged? For example, a label that we see on coffee or chocolate, fair trade. Fair for whom? There's a lot of conversation around that fair trade certification. How much does the farmer benefit from it? How much do they have to pay to get that certification? What it means for them. If a coffee doesn't have that because they don't have the budget to get that certification, does it mean that it's worse than the other fair trade coffee? Maybe not. So we need to really think about those, and also we want to try to improve our food literacy, knowledge of how to cook, where food comes from. And we said knowledge doesn't necessarily translate to action, but also the more we know, the more informed decisions we can make. And then also try to make some small modifications to our eating. Drastic, radical changes most of the times don't sustain, but if we try to make those small modifications, making those choices that we don't usually make, but in an attempt to have more healthier, sustainable choices, are going to be helpful. And also thinking about reducing our food waste, because the majority of food waste that happens along the supply chain, it happens at the consumer level. And it's very important for the consumers to understand that part of it and just use small strategies and modifications to try to reduce their food waste. That's all I have for today, and thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Sadaf. I think that we all will be looking at grocery store shelves differently perhaps, and maybe being a little bit more skeptical about some of the labels we're seeing, and hopefully maybe a little bit more open-minded in thinking about our food choices going forward. So on that note, we have time for some questions, if anybody has one.
Would it be possible to put a health rating on every product and show at the bottom of the retail slip the score?
So this is a great question, and this is a sort of a strategy that has been explored a lot. There are some major challenges around that in terms of the definition of what healthy is, and the nutritional factor labeling is an attempt to do that. So they give you numbers around what's in the product, but it would be very difficult to sort of quantify if something is healthy or not. In Europe, there is a label called the Nutri label, and it has A, B, C, D, E categories, and then it's color coded, and A and B, and those are the healthier options. But it's because there are so many products out there, having a unified approach that makes the comparison fair, it's going to be very difficult, because you don't know, are you comparing within categories or just in general as food itself? Because, for example, we all know apple is healthy, but if you're comparing it to a frozen pizza, But among different frozen pizzas, one might be healthier than the other one. So that means we would need another rating for that. But then among those, there might be another category. So that would be sort of the North Star for being able to communicate that message easily and conveniently with the consumer. But having that unified system to do that measurement is still very complicated.
I've wondered whether the producer pays the store to put their product at eye level.
So it depends. In social science and humanities, it always depends. It depends on the store, and it depends on the producer, and it depends on the arrangements that they have. But there are opportunities for producers to pay a certain amount, so then their product would be promoted or would be placed at a certain space. But that means that they have to pay, and not all producers have the funds to pay for that. So again, they don't have a fair chance of having their product forward and center. And that goes back to my point that it's more of a systemic approach that we need to take rather than just like looking at it specifically, because if they don't have the money, they're not going to be able to put it there. So then people are not going to see their product.
I have a question about marketing. There's a trend in grocery stores now to sell things buy two and the price is 30-40% cheaper than if you only buy one. I understand the benefit to the store if it's a snack food, because if you got the snack food at home, you're going to eat it, you're going to go back and buy more. But for things like peanut butter, which don't go bad, I don't understand the benefit to the store of selling it to you cheaper if you buy two instead of one. In fact, it seems to me to be a tax on the people that are having trouble affording food.
So that goes really deep into the strategies that the grocery stores have. For example, it might be a matter of inventory. They're not going to able to store that product for a long time, so then they want you to purchase it. It depends on the margins of the product. Sometimes bundling them together and people buying them, it increases the chance of people buying them, because if it's one, it's not justified for the price, but when it's two, now it's justified. And now people are going to buy it. Without the bundle, people are never going to buy it, because that price, as I said, it communicates value. Now it's more valuable because it's two. So it really depends on the strategy that they have for the revenue management, for their inventory management, for the product itself, for the margins. And it will really have to look into the detail of like what that specific product is worth for them.
Sadaf, can I ask a question about the word sustainability? Before the presentation, you were telling me about how that is imbued with so much meaning, but it's not just about environmental concerns. Can you talk about that for a minute?
So the definition of sustainability, the one that academics refer to, is being able to meet your needs without compromising the future generations' ability to meet their needs. And I think that's the definition that we should always go back to when you're thinking about, is this sustainable or not? Because a lot of people tend to have a more of a tunnel vision on the environmental aspect related to sustainability. And we always say sustainability has three dimensions. It's environmental, it's social, and it's economic. If it's truly sustainable, it needs to be good for the environment. It needs to care about the well-being and the health of the society. And it also needs to have economic value because of things related to just general practices in business, but also labor and wages and affordability. So it needs to have there needs to be an overlap between all these three dimensions. And sometimes there is this very narrow focus only on environmental impact, and then specifically carbon footprint. There are so many other environmental impacts, especially when it comes to food. For certain items, the water consumption, acidification, eutrophications, these are some of the more prominent and important environmental impacts of food production. But for some reason, the buzzword is the carbon footprint. And that's what people only look at. And we need to, just as I was talking to Elizabeth around it, that we need to not only focus on the environmental aspect and think about all the other aspects of sustainability as well.
I'm a little bit curious with the new labeling that's coming out in January, which I actually was completely unaware of. So thanks for informing me of that. What will the government do, I wonder, if people who need healthy food cannot buy anything except the ones with the big black labels?
That is a great question. It sort of feeds into that topic of food insecurity. If people are not able to afford, if we are promoting healthy, nutritious food, but people are not able to afford it, then it all becomes irrelevant. It becomes useless because, okay, I know this is not good for me, but I'm not able to afford it. So there needs to be another layer of support for people to be able to afford it. I won't be able to speak to what specifically the government would be doing, but there needs to be some support for people, especially right now with the inflation, with the prices increasing, but from a more of a sustainability angle. And what my area of research and focus and expertise is for example, they would say, okay, so some of these, for example, beef has high negative environmental impact, and it's also becoming very expensive. So then what are people's alternatives? Pulses and legumes. Those are very good options that have protein. They are less expensive, and this is something that people could substitute. So it's about creating that other layer of support for people to be able to afford, as well as being able to have the knowledge to make those alternate decisions.
Over here.
Yeah.
It seems to me from what you're describing now that the goal of marketing is to shift my decision making from system 2 to system 1. So I should buy something without thinking about it. And it makes me wonder, where in the value chain is this apparently someone's decision to offer us something for our good and benefit rather than for their profit? And so I would offer one example that I'd like to hear your thoughts on. It didn't really come out. It has a triple whammy like yourself. It has engineering, it has health, and it has marketing. And that's ultra-processed foods. Mm-hmm. Can you comment on those?
So ultra-processed food it requires a whole other session to go through, because it is a very interesting and complicated topic to unpack. But just going back to the first point that you mentioned, so the goal of marketing or marketing endeavors is not to move you from system 1 to system 2, but the goal should be creating value for the consumer, trying to understand what the consumer wants and what they need, and then designing all these elements in a way that it would provide that value for the consumer. And sometimes these would result in people changing their choice. And it's not necessarily thinking about just like system 1 to system 2 or vice versa. It's about giving cues or giving nudges for people to change their choice. But I think it's important to understand that marketing is not the devil. It's just a strategy, but we have to understand that it impacts our food choices. And for ultra processed food, I'd be happy to talk to you about it afterwards, because it is a very it's a very complicated topic to unpack, especially the regulation around ultra processed food and how it is defined. It has those nuances that we really have to get into to be able to really discuss it in a fair manner.
I have a question about economics. And that is, if you could talk for a minute about the intersection of affordability, inflation, and the profitability of the grocery store chains.
I take my fifth. Well, I mean, that is a very relevant topic this day, especially with the prices increasing and especially the younger generation that I'm really interested in studying, struggling to be able to afford food or afford so many other things, for that matter. So my specialty, my background is not economics, but the way that I look at it is just through the lens of being able to afford food and what kind of support is needed for people to be able to afford food, and how the supply chain needs to be structured in a way that it circulates that income in a way that people would be able to afford food. And that movement of thinking about buying Canadian, it becomes very important in this scenario, because if there is more Canadian products that are produced in Canada, it means more people are going to be able to work in the supply chain. So then people are going to have more money. So then they're going to be able to afford food that was produced locally or within Canada. So it's actually going to cost less. So then the whole loop, it becomes more economic, it becomes more feasible and financially better for people. But that topic, it would be a bit outside my scope of knowledge and expertise.
For no-name products, are we paying less for quality or just less for the marketing that's gone into it?
Sorry, for
No-name products?
so do you mean the brand, the
Yeah.
no-name brand? Are we paying less for?
For the quality of the product or just because it's less marketed?
So no-name products are actually marketed pretty well, and it's a good technique because it's no name. You would think there is no branding, and the branding is no name. But you see that and you say, well, I'm not spending money for the name. So whatever money I'm spending is on the actual product. So the perception of the consumer is it's high quality product. And then that goes back to the product itself. If it can deliver that quality, then that's a good thing, because you're not spending money on the name. That means that it's going to be provided at a lower cost. But if it delivers on quality, then you're actually paying for the higher quality without paying for the branding of it.
So there's no name and then there's no name.
Yes.
And if it's Loblaw's no name, then you think that's probably okay. But if it's some random no name, so it is a brand.
Yeah.
Right. It becomes one.
I have a question. The federal government about 4 days ago has unwound part of the anti-greenwashing rules that it only enacted 18 months ago. And I wonder what that says to you, that's supposedly around business certainty. And what does that say to you, if anything, about either the appetite of governments to regulate in this field or the ability for them to successfully do so?
So the initiative and the intention behind the bill is something that will have a lot of impact, and it's something that would be very beneficial for consumers. How it's implemented, and as you said, the ability of them to be able to really enforce it, that's another story. And we will have to see how that unfolds. As you said, the bill came out 18 months ago, and now it's getting to action, and it also takes time, but some of it is in response to consumer demand, that people want more transparency. People want to be able to make more informed decision. And if there's a regulation around some of these claims that companies or businesses are making, the decision-making process becomes much easier for them. So then we'll have to see that how it would perform for businesses and how they'll be able to actually implement it.
This isn't so much a question as maybe a statement, just to iterate what things you've been saying tonight. I always thought that I read labels. I always thought that I was buying, in most cases, good quality product. I was gobsmacked when I put on my phone one of the apps. The one I chose, and I'm sure there's very many, is called Yucca. And so you can scan your barcodes. And you talk about I was choosing things based on athlete, this, that, just like you were saying. And they rate the products out of 100. And a lot of ones were like 5, 7. I was absolutely astounded at what I was learning by scanning some barcodes. It almost became an obsession as I'm in the grocery store with, scanning 5 cans of beans. But I can't believe what I've learned by doing that. And how it's changed my shopping.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And as you said, it's sometimes there's so many apps out there that do that, and they have different, similar to the labeling for healthy, they have different systems of scoring and measuring things, and it's good. It's a good step to have a deeper understanding of the food choices that we are making. And I do understand that sometimes it just becomes an obsession because you just get so in your head that, okay, what am I eating? What am I doing? What is the difference between all these products? And we don't want that, but we also want to make sure that we are making those informed decisions and the decisions that serves us best.
Can I say one more? This is also not a question, but it reminded me of your comment about the halo effect. I read recently a book called The Certainty Illusion by Timothy Caulfield. I don't know if anyone's heard of him. He's a fantastic science writer, and he talks about this, like how we see the word natural and we think, okay, that one, that's good, without asking any questions, or the impact of influencers, people saying it's good, so you just assume it's good, and how being, as you said in your last slide, literate about labels and products is a really important way to approach food, I think.
Yeah.
So I'll let Dawn wrap things up.
I think that food all of a sudden has become much more complicated. And I think that's probably a good thing. So I think we'll probably all go home and maybe read a label and or two, or at least do so in the future. So you've given us a lot to think about, Sadaf, and I thank you for that. And I would ask you to join me in thanking Sadaf for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
And next week, folks, I hope to see you here for the last of the food series. It's Dr. Thomas Graham, and he's going to leave us with a hopeful vision for the future of farming, grounded in science, innovation, and sustainability. So I hope to see you next week. And please do stop by at the connector table on your way out. Good night.